and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different, even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Ginger Tea drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating your body, because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, good morning, Uganda, and welcome to this very special Thursday, a public holiday at that. And well, you know why we are celebrating. Well, if you do not know why we are celebrating, and for you, you're just there, you're at home, you know it's a public holiday, it will be very sad. It's very important for you to know why it is a public holiday, why we are celebrating it, and why you should be celebrating it as a Ugandan, today being the Liberation Day. Happy National Liberation Day here in Uganda to you, our fellow Ugandans, our fellow citizens. My name is Philomena Mastiko, and of course celebrations definitely are really going to be head on this entire day right there in Kakumiro district, where we'll be having the official celebrations with, of course, the chief guest being His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, accompanied by very many other dignitaries, international guests. We do have our MPs, you know, to mention but a few. You're very lucky that UBC TV will be giving you a live feed as the day goes by, and you will know what's happening minute by minute. But before we get into all that, of course, I am with Mollen over here, and I do have Felix Nkunda as well. Probably later on, Robert will be joining us virtually, so he'll be giving us all the intel that is happening in Kakumiro district. But good morning, Mollen.
Yes, a very good morning to you, and I want to say good morning, Uganda. Well, NRA, NRM celebration, this is an anniversary. I think at this point, as Ugandans, we celebrate the fact that we had that transformation into what is a peaceful and secure country for now. It is quite a pivotal moment when you look back in 1986 to see that kind of transformation, and it marked really a very important day in the politics of Uganda. And right from President Museveni's words, and I'll quote what he said then. He said, "No one should think that what is happening today is a mere change of guard. It is a fundamental change in the politics of our country." That was during the swearing-in ceremony back then in '86. But you look at what has happened since then. I mean, we've had quite a society where we're able to elect our leaders. That did not happen before '86, by the way. And I think that is the kind of political transformation he was talking about then. But even if you look at what NRM has achieved since that moment, I think it speaks to what they actually planned coming into the rest of when NRM took over. You move away from what was known then as a 10-point program, which still is running, to what they have been able to achieve with different sectors of the economy. And I'll tell you one thing, we just had a whole talk about the transport sector. You look at the aviation industry, but as Uganda, we've really moved quite a distance. Leave on the transformation of Uganda Airlines, but we've had a lot that has been done in terms of road sector. I'll tell you that we've had a lot of improvement, and I'll give an example of a road I'm quite familiar with. Growing up, we did see that road from Kabusu towards Bonamaya, Seguku. It used to be a dusty road. As a kid, you just wonder whether you're in some third world country. I think by then we were even still considered third world. But if you look into the development that has been around that road ever since it was worked on, then you're able to see a lot of works that have been done into the transport sector. You also look at, for example, the Entebbe Expressway. A lot has been progressing, and I think those are all achievements that have been done under that kind of atmosphere, political atmosphere, but also with NRM leadership. You look at the education sector,
yes,
by the way. And we've been able to transform. Some of us are actually UPE products, I think. From UPE,
from
you have
1993.
Exactly.
Yes, now we can tell.
So we were born in the UPE system, and I will tell you that a lot of Ugandans have benefited, right, even to the university levels. There has been a lot, even private sector also getting into that and boosting the education across this country. There are a lot, I wouldn't mention that.
Very many transformation indeed, and of course we'll be looking at all those celebrations throughout the course of the 37 years. Of course, under the theme in which they're going to be celebrating this very specific day, of course, our resolute efforts to transform Uganda is the promise we shall fulfill. That is the theme of today's celebrations. As Robert, you've had, rather Felix, as you've had, clearly, you don't have... Well, I'm sure I would be very excited to talk about this, but you will still be giving us the intel.
How happy we would be to say something about this day.
Well, as you can see, we don't necessarily have to have been born then for us to know the info. Like, you always bully us here on a daily. Now, you who probably was still a little kid, I don't know what you remember back in the day, but I would love to hear what you have to say. Or the stories your parents, probably your grandparents told you.
You'll be surprised. I've also just taken time to read about some of these things.
I knew it.
He's always picking on us as millennials, but I do think that he was born in this whole NRA.
He's with us.
Yeah, you're within the docket. So next time, just own it.
No, but honestly, a day like this is a day for us to really bless God and to appreciate some of the few people who still live and those who have passed on. As we do celebrate the Liberation Day. Now, the name also just puts it out there for us to take it up as it is. Literally, we are looking at a day when a country was changed from the whims of running, like they used to say. In the Luganda word brings it out much better, the duka. You know, when you hear the women say that, I remember one of the stories I'll tell you, in Rubaga, where I was born, or I was even raised for that matter, they used to tell us that before 86 there, around that time, around 86, 87, all those, like during day, people would go back to their homes. They would go Kabusu, Narukorongo, but as long as it clocked around 4 to 5, they would all go to the cathedral. So they used to sleep in the church. You would have to carry all your kids and go to the cathedral because of the instabilities, because they didn't know when the rebels would come around to loot, to do all these things. Because many people used to lose lives. So their safe havens would be the churches and the mosques. In fact, I think by then it was Cardinal Subuga, the late now. And at some point, when it became also very, very crowded, they had to find a way of getting other churches. So, and the aftermath of the same also brought in two places that you've heard called the Kateyambas, somewhere in Narukorongo.
And this happened for 5 years, because this
was like a way of life of people during that time. So the choice of the day and the name, Liberation, just brings it out much well. Of course, you will not, one will take you to the extreme far where you're going to talk about the NRA, the bush, that's how they organized themselves, how they took over, how they attacked where and what. But all these were done in the spirit of changing the ways of life of Ugandans. It was a spirited fight put up against a particular regime to see that Ugandans have a moment where they will celebrate being Ugandans that is peaceful. And I think that's what they call the liberation. And of course, probably fitting directly into what Mollen did say, the president said that day, I think when they had taken over Kampala, he said that this is not a mere change of guards. but rather a fundamental change, definitely, which has consistently been exhibited in some areas up till today,
Yes.
which we shall be probably touching bit by bit when you go into the sectors. You did talk about infrastructure, and you may want to, because after 37 years, is it?
Yeah, 37.
37 years, you want
yes.
then to cause evaluation in celebration. The day like this, you want to re-evaluate and look at how far have they gone on the scorecard in terms of infrastructure, in terms of peacifying Uganda, and later on the region. You get the point.
Yes.
How has the army, the then NRA, transformed into a UPDF, a more civil army? You understand? How has it grown? Now it has how many different, you have the SFCs, you have the Air Force, you have the Marine, all these that were not part of. So all those transitions, you look at how has the then NRA, its transformation to UPDF, incorporated the young people. You understand? Because today you look at the various people with various tasks in the UPDF and what they are doing. For example, you look at the most recent CDFs, the former David Muhoozi,
yes.
now the CDF body. And you see, this is a whole new generation. Look around them, the various different commanders or generals or what. All these resonate directly into the art of liberation, that having caused a liberation, there's now a transition handover to the generation that there's what we call a succession plan of the army. The army has, so all these are things we want to delve into and have a discussion about on days like this, where we do celebrate the liberation. But the ultimate question, or the million-dollar question, would be for you and me and Mollen, is, do you feel liberated up till today?
Yes.
In terms of very many things: constitutionality, human rights,
when it comes to the
economic liberation.
Yes,
talk about that. Women love to talk about, they got them from the kitchen to the front.
But
I
it
think
is
the most
visible. Have you seen how in the current Uganda that we have, women are actually having a seat at the table? This was unheard of way back. You do look at what has been transforming since then. How many members of parliament, even creating a seat for a woman member of parliament, did come after the whole NRM movement. We did not have this in the past, and
That's
now you
actually
look
the
at women
first
that are at the
government to do it
forefront
all
of
over
this
in the world,
politics.
to have that affirmative action that definitely did cause recognition into the contribution of women. It was the first in the world.
So I'm telling you, it is actually something you would feel as a woman in Uganda. You would feel that liberation, like
Mollen
you
and
put
Philo,
it.
in short, the women are the one who are more than any other person.
You know, but he did make a point. President Museveni did make it a point to make sure he uplifts youth and women into positions of decisions, and that you might call it positions of power. And this is something that is visible. And I'll tell you one other
You've had the
thing.
Wandera Kaziwes of this world, the
Exactly.
Honorable Rebecca Kadaga at the helm of the speakership you've had. In fact, when you go to the judiciary, you'll be surprised, the likes of Justice Sisache, just to mention Monica's. You go to the IGG, you have the Betty Kamias of this world. You go to the prime ministers, now you have the Honorable Robina Nabanja.
I mean,
when you
if
go
you
to
look at-
police,
yes.
you've had
The vice president
you know, yeah,
herself.
now the vice
Yes.
president. In short, the women are all over. So,
Which shouldn't be a bad
for the good of the
no,
assassination.
Felix, don't put
He's
it
talking
like
about
that.
it like it's
don't put
but
it like
aren't
that.
we
It's not
proud
a problem.
as
Be very
Ugandans
proud
that we
of
have
it. Say it
incorporated
again now
everyone?
with a lot of pride.
Yeah.
Well, say what again?
What you said a couple of minutes. The women are now doing things. They're in the
Yes.
things, running things.
That's
Say
a
it
subject
again.
you can have to discuss. I also know that
It's
the women.
evident.
I also know that the
president-
women in parliament are throwing out each other. So on top of all that,
Well, but you see,
come
that
on.
also
We cannot
speaks to
let
the
one bad-
freedom,
yes.
the freedom that has been provided. Imagine
throw
a
out
time.
people.
No, that's not. That is speech. If you are able to say things, and actually, I'm happy about this recent act about Computer Misuse Act. The things you say could and will be used against you at some point. So even when you're in position of power, the moment you abuse it, there are people who have the freedom to actually call you up on it. And I think that is quite clear, and that is the freedom that has been provided. But there's also one thing that I want to really make notice of today. That is among the achievements of NRM. When we talk about water and sanitation, I'll give you my experience growing up back in Rurizi. By then, we didn't have this whole National Water and Sewage Corporation. But if I look at where we are now, we are able to also have National Water and Sewage Corporation in my home district, in my village actually. I'll tell you that. And I think these are some of the things that growing up you did not see, but there have been changes that have been coming up in a while and over the course of these years. So I think these are some of the achievements we really have to look at, and you're like, yeah, I'm speaking from experience. I didn't have to be born then, but at least growing up, I'm seeing the changes, and I think we've taken a huge step in that
Also,
regard.
when you compare to the stories you always told, you know, your parents or your uncles will tell you, but you see, for us during that time before when Museveni came through, the experience is totally different from what is happening right now. But also, I know that as NRM, really, they do acknowledge that there's some places where they still need to put more effort, and they're working towards that. Well, all of that we'll be discussing today, so make sure you do stick with us, and I hope now you have caught up on why you're probably at home, why you're not at work. It's not just a public holiday for you need to understand why you're celebrating.
Shouldn't it have been a better one? I'm just saying for somebody out there.
Ugandans, you like to customize everything. Now you want this one to be a Friday. I mean,
or a Monday, you know.
It's Good Morning Uganda, and we are with you all the way. We're going to be taking you through some of our stories, local ones, and of course international ones as well.
Well, of course, looking at our stories, looking at the local stories now, our first story will be that one of the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Thomas Tayewa, who did instruct Ministry of Finance to provide all the necessary information to the committees of budget to complete the compilation of the budget now performance reports for financial year 2021-2022 by the end of this week. The House has also adopted the report due to failure by the Minister of Finance to provide information on expenditures of the last quarter of the financial year. And with the same spirit, the IGG, the Inspectorate of Government, Betty Olive Namisango Kamya, has applauded the whistleblowers who unearthed the corruption-related acts at Entebbe International Airport. Now, in a meeting with the media, IGG Betty Kamya said the whistleblowers, despite their lowly positions, were brave enough to expose this kind of corruption. The Ministry of Education and Sports has launched Unlearn, ULearn initiative geared towards enabling teachers skills upgraded. The Minister of State for Higher Education, John Chrysostom Muyingo, emphasizes the need to equip teachers with new skills in teaching, which they in turn pass on to the learners. Now, 1,000 teachers have so far been enrolled into the online initiative that offers various courses. The National Social Security Fund, remotely used by highly placed government officials and politicians to divert misappropriate workers' funds to bankroll private businesses of people benefiting from abuse of state power. Acting Managing Director Patrick Ayota's remarks follow statements made by the Line Minister of Labour, Gender and Social Development, Betty Among, and growth of contributors to the fund. Remittances need to be investigated as well.
Well, getting over to the international stories, the US will send 31 powerful battle tanks to Ukraine, joining Germany in sending the vehicles to support the fight against Russia's invasion. The decision to deliver the M1 Abrams tanks was announced just hours after Germany said it would send 14 of its Leopard 2 tanks to the battlefield. Berlin also cleared the way for other European countries to send German-made tanks from their own stocks. Ukraine has lobbied Western allies to send the military equipment for months, and it hailed the twin announcements as a turning point that would allow its military to regain momentum and take back occupied territory almost a year after Moscow invaded. It also said the tanks could help deter a potential Russian offensive in the spring. Donald Trump will be allowed back to Facebook and Instagram after Meta announced it would be ending its 2-year suspension of his accounts. The suspension will end in the coming weeks, the social media giant said. In a statement, Nick Clegg, Meta's president of global affairs, said the public should be able to hear that their politicians are saying. The then US president was indefinitely suspended from Facebook and Instagram after the Capitol riot back in 2021. The firm had taken action following Mr. Trump's praise for people engaged in violence at the Capitol. The suspension was an extraordinary decision taken in extraordinary circumstances. He said a review found that Mr. Trump's accounts no longer represented a serious risk to public safety. But because of Mr. Trump's past violations, he would now face heightened penalties for repeat offenses.
Tanzanian opposition leader returns home after 6 years. Now the opposition leader Tundu Lissu has returned from self-imposed exile 6 years after he was shot numerous times during an assassination attempt. He said he has decided to go home because of the lifting of a ban on opposition political rallies earlier this month. Cheering supporters greeted Mr. Lissu, who waved from the open-top car, taking him from Dar es Salaam airport to Tualari nearby. The defeated former presidential candidate says he hopes that Tanzania's governing CCM party is ready for a more open style of politics. And in another story, NASA has revealed plans to create a nuclear-powered rocket that could send astronauts to Mars in just 45 days. The agency, which has partnered with Pentagon's Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA, to design a rocket, announced on Tuesday that it could build a working nuclear thermal rocket engine as soon as 2027. NASA's current rocket system, including Space Launch System, which last year sent the Artemis 1 rocket on a historical round trip to the moon, are based on a century-old traditional method of chemical propulsion in which an oxidizer, which gives the reaction more oxygen to combust within, is mixed with flammable rocket fuel to create a flaming jet of thrust. Now, the proposed nuclear system, on the other hand, will harness the chain reaction from tearing apart atoms to power a nuclear fusion reactor that would be 3 or more times more efficient and could reduce Mars flight times to a fraction of the current 7 months, according to the agency.
Well, of course, if we are talking about news, there is a lot more still coming in from print. And looking at our dailies this morning, the New Vision and the Daily Monitor, starting over 900 schools operating illegally, and vice attributed to inadequate monitoring and enforcement. A full story in the New Vision. Energy Minister commissions Namamve Luzira power line as well. Also looking at Makere hit by high student dropout rates. Now this would be very, very sad, but another story that you need to look up. And of course, more on the Liberation Day. They're giving you quite a special pullout for that very specific conversation, as today we are celebrating 37 years. Well, go get yourself the New Vision and catch up on all that and many, many more. And away from that, moving on to Daily Monitor, Kasese on the spot over same-sex law. And the question is, what is the agenda? What Parliament says is a local non-governmental organization is behind the bylaw that Kasese Municipal Council is accused of attempting to pass. And authorities have quite a lot to say, especially in the Rwenzururu sub-region, and they maintain that they are actually innocent. Well, that is also there for you to see. Christian faithful flock to Chenjejo Matters site as they're making their pilgrimages, and Makere moves to trim undergraduate admissions from 2024. And of course, 37 years of NRM's journey. You can find all of that in the Daily Monitor this very specific morning. Good morning, Uganda. We're still with you all the way. Today is a Thursday, and we're going to have the song of the day. And when we get back, we'll be having quite some more conversations and discussions about today's special occasion. Good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Yeah. Da 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 da.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, good morning, Uganda, and welcome to this very special Thursday, a public holiday at that. And well, you know why we are celebrating. Well, if you do not know why we are celebrating, and for you, you're just there, you're at home, you know it's a public holiday, it will be very sad. It's very important for you to know why it is a public holiday, why we are celebrating it, and why you should be celebrating it as a Ugandan, today being the Liberation Day. Happy National Liberation Day here in Uganda to you, our fellow Ugandans, our fellow citizens. My name is Philomena, Mastiko, and of course celebrations definitely are really going to be head-on this entire day right there in Kakumiro District, where we'll be having the official celebrations with, of course, the chief guest being His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, accompanied by very many other dignitaries, international guests. We do have our MPs, you know, to mention but a few. You're very lucky that UBC TV will be giving you a live feed as the day goes by, and you will know what's happening minute by minute. But before we get into all that, of course, I am with Mollen over here, and I do have Felix Nkunda as well. Probably later on, Robert will be joining us virtually, so he'll be giving us all the intel that is happening in Kakumiro District. But good morning, Mollen.
Yes, a very good morning to you, and I want to say good morning, Uganda. Well, NRM celebration, this is an anniversary. I think at this point, as Ugandans, we celebrate the fact that we had that transformation into what is a peaceful and secure country for now. It is quite a pivotal moment when you look back in 1986 to see that kind of transformation, and it marked really a very important day in the politics of Uganda. And right from President Museveni's words, and I'll quote what he said then. He said, "No one should think that what is happening today is a mere change of guard. It is a fundamental change in the politics of our country." That was during the swearing-in ceremony back then in '86. But you look at what has happened since then. I mean, we've had quite a society where we're able to elect our leaders. That did not happen before '86, by the way. And I think that is the kind of political transformation he was talking about then. But even if you look at what NRM has achieved since that moment, I think it speaks to what they actually planned coming into the rest of when NRM took over. You move away from what was known then as the 10-point program, which still is running, to what they have been able to achieve with different sectors of the economy. And I'll tell you one thing, we just had a whole talk about the transport sector. You look at the aviation industry, but as Uganda, we've really moved quite a distance. Leave on the transformation of Uganda Airlines, but we've had a lot that has been done in terms of road sector. I'll tell you that we've had a lot of improvement, and I'll give an example of a road I'm quite familiar with. Growing up, we did see that road from Kabusu towards Bonamaya, Seguku. It used to be a dusty road. As a kid, you just wonder whether you're in some third world country. I think by then we were even still considered third world. But if you look into the development that has been around that road ever since it was worked on, then you're able to see a lot of works that have been done into the transport sector. You also look at, for example, the Entebbe Expressway. A lot has been progressing, and I think those are all achievements that have been done under that kind of atmosphere, political atmosphere, but also with NRM leadership. You look at the education sector,
yes,
by the way. We've been able to transform. Some of us are actually UPE products, I think. From UPE,
from
you have
1993.
Exactly.
Yes, now we can tell.
So we were born in the UPE system, and I will tell you that a lot of Ugandans have benefited, right, even to the university levels. There has been a lot, even private sector also getting into that and boosting the education across this country. There are a lot, I wouldn't mention
Clearly,
the
very
whole
many
list.
transformation indeed, and of course we'll be looking at all those celebrations throughout the course of the 37 years, of course, under the theme in which they're going to be celebrating this very specific day, of course, our resolute efforts to transform Uganda is the promise we shall fulfill. That is the theme of today's celebrations. As Robert, you've had, rather Felix, as you've had, clearly, you don't have...
Robert.
Well, I'm sure he would be very excited to talk about this, but he will still be giving us the
intel. How
intel.
happy it would be to say something about this day.
Well, as you can see, we don't necessarily have to have been born then for us to know the info. Like you always bully us here on a daily. Now, you who probably was still a little kid, I don't know what you remember back in the day, but I would love to hear what you have to say. Or the stories your parents, probably your grandparents told you.
You'll be surprised. I've also just taken time to read about some of these
I
things.
knew it. I knew it.
He's always speaking on us as millennials, but I do think that he was born in this whole NRA.
He's with us.
Yeah,
He's
you
with
were
us.
within the
Somewhere
docket.
there in
So
the mix.
next
Somewhere there
time,
in the
just
mix.
own it.
No, but honestly, a day like this is a day for us to really bless God and to appreciate some of the few people who still live and those who have passed on.
My Airtel app. Visit the App Store or Google Play now. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Two minutes past 7 a.m. today, 26th of January 2023, and of course we are celebrating the NRM Liberation Day. Now today marks 37 years of celebration of national resistance movements ever since NRA did take over back on the same day, 26th of January in 1986, under the leadership of His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Now, today's celebrations are going to be happening in Kakumiro District, of course, with His Excellency as the chief guest, and of course, very many other dignitaries are going to be in his presence, and he'll be taking us through. I am very excited to hear what he has to say. And today's celebrations, again, will be held under the theme our resolute efforts to transform Uganda is a promise we will fulfill. Clearly, we are looking at transformations in this 37 years. What has happened before and after? Where have you registered the transformation? Are you, and the very, very important question that you did ask Felix earlier on, talking about individuals. As an individual, do you feel transformed? Well, all of this, right from the economic transformations, looking at security transformations, everything economic, political, social, every sector and every area it has pretty much had a transformation. And we will be going through a couple of them. We'll be showing you where and how the numbers, which numbers have gone high, statistics gone low. All of that we'll be sharing with you, as you know, we also await to be giving you a live feed of what is happening there during the course of the celebrations. So do stay with us here on UBC. Also, you can be part of this discussion. Get onto our socials, Twitter, #UBCGMU. Also make use of our WhatsApp number and let us know one of the greatest achievements you think NRM has registered and that has benefited you on all fronts, socially, politically, and economically. But yes, you, Felix, you were really telling us some of the stories that you did not finish, and I was waiting for this specific time for you to let us know. But before we get into all of the stories, I don't know, the social transformations, the economic transformations, the political transformations, do you think that Ugandans are appreciating them quite a lot, especially the young people? You know, when you hear a young person talking about...
Why do you want to pick out the young people?
You know why?
Is that unfair?
It's not really unfair, but when a young person tells you, a person who was born after, when they're telling you, when they're narrating to you, and you listen to a person who was there before, they're giving two experiences, they're giving you two encounters, and at one point you'll think you're not in the same country, or they're not living under the same country. I mean, it has been thrown to us that we don't appreciate these efforts quite often, or much more we should.
Let me even just start on that note. And this one goes directly to the leadership of this country. I hope as they sit somewhere in Kakumiro today where the celebrations are going to be, they think about this, that on top of every other good thing that has been done by the liberators, they have done one disservice of failing to put this information in the domain where it can be used as a tool of education. That's why on days like this is where we go to the archives and we dust the books, you know, and then you start talking about. But this has been a continuous discussion for us in the academia, that how about we closely try to close in on our own history, because clearly it is the only definition we have to make appreciation into what they are struggling to put out there as taught patriotism. How about we teach these things? You know, the NRA had a war that stretched for over 5 years.
Yes.
Do you know what happened in those 5 years? That can be a full course at the university with 3 years.
I think isn't that medicine though?
And someone can graduate in the history of Uganda with a full degree. I think we have enough history. I think as we celebrate this day is something we may want to resonate about for the whoever is in Kakumiro, to take time and think about the wealth in this history that we do share. Because the people who used to tell this history, unfortunately, or by the call of God, most of them have left the world. On days like this, we used to host the late now General Eli Tumwini, and he would narrate and tell you on a date like this, then we went to Kichwamba, then we went to Luwero, then we attacked Kavamba. That series, those series of events were all known for a show. The lives that were lost in this bid, I think it is worthy for us to develop a curriculum, to fix it somewhere in the curriculum, or even a full course for someone to be a graduate in the history of Uganda. Let me tell you, when you go to Harvard, when you're doing people who do research, you can research about history of Africa, in particular Uganda.
Yes.
I have seen those papers being submitted. Even you go online, go to the universities of Ghana, you can imagine, the University of Nigeria, their research is about history of Uganda. But when you go to Makerere, how many papers have been researched in relation to the history of Uganda with a case study of the NRA Bush War or the Liberation War? I think there's a challenge for us, people in the academia forum. We need to bring this to life. Instead of teaching people John Speak, continuously. John speak. We have the missionaries.
Yes.
Then they talk about, I've had people who did geography used to study the rainlands.
The rainlands and
this money pays, whatever pay.
the Canadian prairies, yes.
You can hear such things. I think we need to, this celebration would make more sense if we try and it is possible.
It's possible, yes.
It is, one would ask you the relevance of that, but the relevance is out there, that this is history that must be secured, and for you to secure this history in the relevant form, you must bring it out to people to learn it. Because who's going to tell this after 20 years from now? That will be probably 57 years. You will be having people to tell these stories. People who will go to the Kakumiro then will not have someone to say these things. Before you know, the Liberation Day may end with the historicals who are still alive. Because they're the only ones who have continuously kept the appreciation of the liberation to themselves. I wanted to start on that note because it's something that, in as much as we are in a celebration, we must think of celebrating in another way this liberation. If now I tweak back to the liberation, the celebration itself. The word liberation, if you want to give it a generic definition, it is to save someone from a situation. You liberated me. Now, liberation, for a liberation to happen, there must be good vis-a-vis bad. You must be moving from a bad, a queer, unstable, challenging, painful situation to a situation that clearly directly walks into the opposite of all those words, to a better, a promising, a stable, etc. situation. So there's a move from one atmosphere to another atmosphere, and this is what happened. If you want me to put it clearly out there, there was a swift move from poor, unstable, uncertain, painful, unpeaceful situation, deadly, mention all the bad things that come with bad governance, into an era that was more certain, more promising, more stable in terms of all aspects of governance. That would include political, economic, social, religious, and cultural. Just to take you aback, you notice that around 1969, 66, that stretch, from around 1962, after the aftermath of 62, up to about 1979, up to about 1980, there is no proved time of stability, if you read in history, that in this time we had a stable country.
Yes.
Because remember, we had Kawaka Mutesa as who would have been ordained president in the aftermath of the independence, which had a big contestation about his leadership as president, because there was a gentleman called Dr. Milton Obote beneath him, who assumed power later on in a blanket of prime minister, and there was that clash that went on.
I mean,
he took
it
over.
stretched years for a
before
while.
you know, around 60, 66, 60, around that time, there were turmoils already. There were clashes between the kingdom and the government, the central government, which actually caused one of the most abused words, exiling the Kabaka. I wonder how you would exile a king from his kingdom, because the word exile works when you're being put to, like, someone. It's strange anyway. It was a bit painful, that situation, when you bring that story for the Baganda. It's a very painful recount. Yes. And if even there is a song here that I love to listen to, one time I remember my when I was playing it, my late grandfather told me that song, it's not the best time for you to play that song.
This song, yes.
Because the memories for some of us who are there, the song is called, I think, Barabataliwo. Something like that. You know, and in that song, one of the phrases that they say, that now there was that era where in Buganda kingdom speaking about the king, you would sound like it's blasphemy.
Yeah, you
Yet it's
couldn't
in the
afford to
kingdom
do that.
because of the kind
Yes.
of political governance that was around the situation. So that came to pass. There was an overtakeover, mean against Obote's
Yes.
government. After a couple of about 7-something years, then Obote too. Remember when he went to Tanzania, the Nyereres, and the dying of the East African community.
Yes.
Then because of the clash, at some point, His Excellency Idi Amin even called the other people, some presidents, women, what, at the time. So the coming back of Obote too. Thereafter, of course, then the Tito Okello was. But at that point, there was a lot of cause of friction, which the now president had disagreed, because I think was part of the government then, and there was a couple of disagreements, but there was underground pressure that wouldn't let a nation stably exist. Because when you overthrow Philomena, the person who has overthrown you cannot stabilize, because you're still there. They know you're planning something and all these kind of things. Now we get into a situation where the politics has entirely evolved greatly. And what do you see? You see new players. DP is there, the UPC is there, I think we had, now so many. Then the formation of the FRONASAs and all this. But all these ones were formed as the evidence of an unstable state. The post-independence period is one of the times that has actually, if you couple those about 30 years after independence up to around 1990, I can tell you that those were more or less wasted years of a country seated on political turmoil. Now,
there could have been a lot that would have happened during that stretch of time.
So much, because every person who came into power, I've not even talked about the rulers of this world, the Yusuf Chironde. I've not talked about those ones, because those ones didn't even get a chance to start off with their leadership.
Yes.
The Binaisas of this world.
I mean, if you look at the time they took over that
so
position.
you can imagine in a span of about 10, 30 years, you had how many presidents? How does a country grow in that period? You have had Obote one, then Mutesa, you've had Obote, then Amin, then Obote, then you have the Yusuf Ule, Chironde, Professor. You have about 5 presidents in a span of 30 years. That means, if you want to, how do you bring a development? Now, all that happening, there are some guys who are noticing that there's a problem. There's a problem. And these are the guys who took an opportunity that they saw that tell you what, how about we exhibit ourselves in various ways. And they took and this liberation, that's why when you say, when the president said that this is not a mere change of guards, it is not what you've been seeing.
Yes.
That's literally what I interpret from what he said. This is not what you have been seeing previously. That
there is a whole lot that is
this is a different
change,
and he was very particular and intentional in a statement, and whoever gave him that word, or whatever, when he thought of that word, if no one gave it to him, a fundamental change was the promise these guys made when they took on power. Now, it does directly fit into the choice of word, liberation.
Yes.
I can give you something related to that. When the Bible, when God sent Moses to rescue the Israelites, and the word categorical was the same word used, to liberate the Israelites from the previous life of pain, from the previous life of uncertainties. And he said, my people should be liberated because they are my chosen race. Liberation means we are putting you out of a particular situation that is characterized by many, as I said earlier, uncertainties, pain, no vision, no what, to a situation where there's hope. There's hope. And as we celebrate days like this, that's why I told you earlier, I started with the issue that we are going to, the biggest challenge we face as we celebrate this liberation is what I said earlier.
Yeah.
But
there needs to be continuity of the celebration.
37 years away from what? Now we are evaluating on the scorecard. Is it actually liberation? Have we been liberated? Do we feel liberated as a country? And that's where probably now now we get to that point where we have to discuss what are the outcomes of the liberation.
Well, we are talking about the celebrations of 30 years of NRM Victory Day. And clearly there are very many changes, good changes, I could say, when His Excellency back in the day did promise us fundamental change. Clearly we have noticed quite a lot of change. Looking at the social service sector revival, looking at areas like politics, where we are noticing political reforms, economic recovery, and actually just to take you through a couple of things, maybe to break it down a little bit when we were talking about fundamental change here, Felix. Looking at some of the social service sector revival changes, the health infrastructure network has actually improved in the country and currently consists of 2 national referral hospitals. And when you look at the regional referral hospitals, the number over there is 19, and 147 district hospitals. And when it gets to the health center 3s, these are the clinical officers present. We're looking at 1,250. Also looking at the health center 4s, the medical officers present, we are looking at 193. Plus, when you go down to the health center 2s, the enrolled comprehensive nurses present, we are looking at 3,610. I mean, these numbers have been growing over time. Before 1986 and after 1986, clearly you can see that it's a path we are still taking. Of course, very many challenges have come along the way, but I mean, we always try to get a solution for that. And maybe also just to take you through a few of the political reforms we are looking at. Introduction of participant grassroots structures, initially known as the resistance councils, the RCs, later renamed to local councils. And I mean, we cannot downplay the role they have really played right now in our societies. I mean, what is an area without an LC? How are you even operating?
Sometimes they disturb us.
Well, yes, that's true. Sometimes they do disturb, but I'm pretty sure
their contribution is much bigger than their...
Well, we're looking at election of people's representatives to the national legislature, and we are looking at also promulgating a new constitution in 1995, under which we are still operating. Decentralization of power to local governments. This has been quite a very good thing, decentralization of power, although of course some people have kind of misused the power, but I mean, there is no, every cloud has a silver lining.
Absolutely.
Yes. And affirmative action for women and other marginalized groups. Now this was what we were talking about earlier on with Mollen. With us, the affirmative action right now is quite very tremendous, I must say, if we are making comparisons.
And if you're to look into the mind of the legislators then who did promulgate the constitution of the 1995 constitution, the fixing in of the affirmative action was in the bid to answer the religious outcry against what used to be called abuse or gender-based abuse in terms of appreciation of the national cake. And I think also in a fulfillment of civility or civilization, it was a necessary, then people termed it as a necessary evil or a necessary problem, to bring ladies, and this I think is on the scorecard of the President of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, that he will forever be remembered for, is this particular aspect of how he incorporated the gender sensitivity in governance. For example, when you get, and I think consistently there's been evidence or fruits to his thought, affirmative action brings on board the most marginalized groups of people, like the disabled people, of course women that are in, the children, just to mention but a few. And this is a big score. It changed the trajectory, the political landscape of the country, because in terms of representation and of course confidence. previously, you know, the addition of the, what is it, 1 point something point to the girl child?
Yes.
At, I think, S6 or an S4.
Yeah, well, they're getting
because
university.
he appreciated the fact that they were vulnerable, and by nature. This is only a discussion that, you know, and this is an international thing, because when you go to most of the international conventions on human rights, on children, on socio-economic rights, universal declarations, they have a different, so I think the appreciation of affirmative action is one of those things that may have not been given much time to appreciate, but I think it's one of the the most timely.
Yes, and one of the things they also do mention is creation of an organized army, which is a very, very true. We know the significance.
I can tell you the evidence of that. Go to Somalia.
Yes.
Go to Sudan. Go to Congo. You know, you go to those countries. Don't even ask Ugandans. I was having a chat one time.
Ugandans may not necessarily actually know.
How would they
they
know?
Actually
they even know the sound of a gun here in Uganda. You ask someone, Tamaina Mundu Wevuga. But I remember I was having a conversation with a colleague somewhere in Mogadishu, and the man was telling me, if it was about purchase, we would purchase your president at any cost. And I'm like, okay, why? He's like, what this country was and what it is, people couldn't have come to Mogadishu 10 years ago, 7 years ago. Like the evidence, and that's what I'm saying, when you're talking about the consistent growth and organization of the UPDF, you don't ask Ugandans. You go to the surrounding countries, go to Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Congo, go as far as Ethiopia, Somalia, and those other countries. They will tell you, because as I've told you, how many Ugandans don't even know how a gun sounds like. And that's the power of the UPDF. So if you want to talk about its organization.
Well, looking at also some of the economic transformations and looking at the recovery, about Uganda's GDP increase from 2020, we are looking at 7.54%. And again, the 6% average annual GDP growth rate between 1986 and 2020. So we are still seeing a growth there being registered. Now, Uganda's growth is more actually remarkable because it is a landlocked country, and it was politically unstable, having experienced misrule through primitive military groups and civil wars. And of course, seeing the instability that was caused, we did not have, like you did take us through a number of series of events that happened before NRA came into the picture. So, I mean, how would you expect an economy to grow at a steady rate? In fact, with all of that?
At some point, when one of our former presidents, did throw out a particular group of people who were more or less in charge of the business transactions in all city holdings in the country.
Yes.
You can imagine how much it fell an economy. So the economic growth is a process that must be appreciated in terms of like commonly now we say process by process. And clearly the process, as long as, and I think this was the trick, when the NRA, now NRM, came into power, I think it noticed that for you to have a revival of the economy, involve the wananchi, give them an opportunity to be a part directly involved with the economy. And I think that's what is happening. Today, it is, I think, only in this country, and no wonder His Excellency a couple of days ago said that even a fool in Uganda can survive. And I would justify that. What does it take you today to be a part of the active economy? For example, who's taxing agricultural products in this country, away from the supermarkets and what? Philomena, you go in the backyard, you dig, plant your cassava, plant your potatoes. When they are ready, you don't even have to go to the market. You just go to any spot next to the road. By 8, you put your mulengo. I don't know what mulengo is in English.
I don't know what mulengo is.
In Uganda either. You don't even know what mulengo is.
No. It happens.
So you put, I don't know, I wish Robert would know.
I could be knowing it in my mother tongue though. So there is that.
Like how you set, you know how they put cassava, the different, and then to make like what they sell. Because in the portions of how they sell them, this is a portion, this portion is 5,000, this portion is...
So that's what they call mulengo.
Mulengo, gwa mogo, mulengo, gwa
rumonde, yes.
So you just put your portions there. Tip. No tax, nothing. You dug them in your backyard.
Yes.
You just went nofuna malagala for cassava, no tekamu. Then you went and got this cassava tube sticks. I don't know what they call it, really, tube. I'm not very good in. Then you planted. Now, even for selling, you put on the roadside.
Yes.
Philomena passing in her car, give me omulengo gwa 15 mpaye midenge 3. In the boot, whoosh, by around midday, you've sold all your things. You have probably about 40,000. You go in your house. Tomorrow, the same thing. Now, that may seem as... But that is what an economy is about.
Yes.
Production, consumption. Once you open up the nets for people to be part of the production net, the production base, and you enable the other people to have the purchasing power, that means you are enabling what we call, in economics you would call it, you're fueling, you're greasing, I don't know, you're oiling the chain of economics. Once people have the power to produce and the others have the power to consume, that is an economy.
Yes.
And now, this is the biggest game changer for NRA. That on top of that, previously all these things could have been possible, one would argue. But it would be very, if you hear the stories, that you couldn't come and sell your things because you were scared of.
Yes.
The soldiers will come, they will be beating you, they will steal your things. So people would not be motivated even to be a part of the production chain. And these are small things we normally miss. That one thing leads to the other. The existence of a peacified atmosphere enables the ultimate and growth of production. We cannot look at that just loosely. Because what's the use of you having a garden full of matoke and what, but you can't transport it from one district to another, where there is now the consumers.
Yes. Because now, if you can't get it there, who is
what's
going
the
to
use?
consume? Yes.
So that now, and that's the dilemma, that that's how economics work. One thing leads to the other. When people are able to produce and the consumers are able to access the produce, then the economy is running. So at no point do you want to kill any contributor in that chain. You don't want us to say that the producer is more important than the consumer.
Yes.
That the consumer is less important. But then talk about the environment. If the markets were not available, what would be the use of the producer? Or where would the consumer find the products?
Yes.
If there was no peace. There are times we have had a bit of instability here in terms of politics, times of elections. You normally have a bit of political mayhem and people lose lives. Have you seen how dry the city is?
It's very dry.
When there's a riot, like right now we are talking, let's say there was a riot normally around the Kiseka areas, by midday, everyone is home.
Is empty. No one
and you know,
is
your
there.
parents will be
It's
calling you, yes, Philomena, Chibuga, mwana wange, Chibuga, Felix, Furume Chibuga, but move Chibuga. Because the situation does not guarantee you to be a part of the economic chain. So you cannot downplay the existence of peace as a big contributor to economic growth. And that was the purpose. That's why I told you that is the reason why we celebrate days like the Liberation Day. Because you can't talk about economic growth without liberation or existence of peace.
Well, we are still looking at some of the transformations in several sectors already gone through some of the economic transformations, looking at also some of the social services sector revival. Well, again, looking at one of the other major, again, achievements under NRM, the integration of Africa beginning with the East African community. You know, government has actually scored tremendously when it comes to this by growing Uganda's export value to 6.34 billion US dollars. Now, this represents about 15.69% of the country's GDP, and this was back in 2021. Now, up from 5.8 US dollars in 2020. Now, all this is compared to 0.50 US dollars billion back in 1986. So you can still see the numbers are going higher, but for the right cause. And the East African region has also grown into one of the biggest economic blocks, spanning from the Indian Ocean all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, covering about 7 member countries with a population of more than 280 million people. Now, this goes without saying how relevant the East African bloc is important for Uganda, especially when it comes to its economy and supporting it. I mean, the other day we were discussing how relevant the rest of the countries are important to Uganda, or what they contribute to Uganda's economy as well. So there is that too. And of course, seeing as that the East African bloc is still growing bigger and bigger, right now discussions are underway on having Somalia join the bloc as well. We don't know how that is going to end, but of course, if you're looking at the bigger and greater side, things will be probably looking good for us, expanding our market, especially for our Ugandan products, to all these countries. So there is that as well. And looking at access to consumer products and goods, again, this is what you were kind of talking about, Felix, just a couple of minutes ago.
But if you may just accept me to just give a brief comment about this East African community.
The ESES.
Yeah. One of the things that you'll notice elsewhere in the world, and even you may bring it on your personal life experience, you've heard of the saying that your network probably would make your net worth. And that's what was in the mind of the Nyereres of this world, the Jomo Kenyatas, and later on, of course, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who's living among the few former vision bearers.
Yes.
Now, it was incumbent on, and I think this guy, Museveni, the president of Uganda, is a very smart guy. Having known that he's suffering with a landlocked country, what do? You just have to find a way of removing a boundary to a country that is not landlocked, so that you can walk in and walk out, and that literally makes you also being part of accessing directly the sea and these ports.
Yes.
And many other things. When you have a population that has a general economic mandate of consumption, you, the landlocked, is the biggest beneficiary of this. Now, it means that Uganda is no longer just close to the boundaries of Kisoro, Amdat, and whatever, all those. It is opened up. And tell you what, before you know, which was Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. Now you're talking about DRC. Have you seen Sudan as well? And now you're discussing even as far as Somalia. Now you look at a population of about over 1 billion probably, or some close to about 500 million, sorry.
Yes.
Population of close to about 200 million. Now you're chasing blocks like the SADCs of this world. Trust me, this integration of the East African integration and the widening the integration may be one of the best things that will happen to this region. And definitely, you may not refuse to comment on that as one of the achievements of the NRA/NRM liberation. As you celebrate today, you must celebrate that. Because it is not easy. It's not an obvious process to bring in a country like Sudan. It's not obvious to bring in the Congos of this world. It's actually risky. You bring in a country that has just gotten independence a couple of years. You bring in a country that even has rebels, insurgency. The Congos
still have a lot to figure out.
But you're looking at the bigger picture. As I told you, if you want to know what UPDF, go to Congo, go to Sudan, go to Somalia. they will tell you that this is one of the best or the strongest army. As one of the people, the generals know, call it the strongest army. I've heard from one of the tweets of General Mohoza at some point referring to this. And that's the reality, the truth of it. It's among the strongest armies in the world you'll ever pick on. Because it has been able to cross boundaries and make progress and pacify those regions. Across, it's above and beyond this. So the East African community is one of those that we do celebrate on days like this.
Well, there are very many other achievements that we will be talking about, that you'll be hearing from His Excellency himself later on as he gives his address in Kakumiro in light of these celebrations. But for now, we have to get through some of our papers, our dailies, and also looking at the Daily Nation and the Citizen, what's going on down there, and maybe starting off with the Daily Nation. Raila's game plan. They're giving you the action plan of this opposition leader, Raila Odinga, who is plotting a gradual escalation of resistance against President William Ruto, which could ultimately snowball into a call for civil disobedience and mass action. They've laid out all the 5 points, and he's probably looking at that to, start his civil disobedience. But also, electricity prices may go up in new proposal. Kenya Power 6 review of tariffs. MPs have their way as NGCDF released. The Treasury sends 4 billion Kenyan shillings to constituencies. Another story that you should look out for. In education, a state seeks World Bank help to build labs for junior secondary, and also mortuary in crisis as bodies pile up. That's such a hazard they could be facing. And villages in Magoha villages in shock as well. Why? All of that in the Daily Nation this morning. Switching to the Citizen, Tanzania. Lisu hits the ground running, and they're showing you quite a movement that isn't new. This is something he said. In fact, it started 32 years ago during the Nyalali Commission. It is imperative that we get a new constitution before the coming elections. What Samia seeks to achieve with DC lineup, and tech guru unlocking infinite possibilities. And on the regional level, Cooperation Somalia likely to join the EAC this year. Again, just something we talked about. We don't know how that is going to go, but hopefully it turns out positive. And Stanchart Rugahi opens up on 2023 business trends as well. All of that in the Citizen, business, economics, and politics all this morning that you can grab in these papers. We are going for a break. Mollen is coming through to give us small weather and climate, and of course probably give us the forecast for today. Later on, we'll be back here on Good Morning Uganda with you.
Keeping an eye on all your balance the old way. I got this. Yeah. Balance is... yeah.
What is he up to now?
Star 11. Keeping an eye on all your balance with the My Airtel app. You have the power in your pocket. The power to see all your balance in one place and in real time. Unlock that power with the My Airtel app. Visit the App Store or Google Play now.
You don't miss him.
Every waking day is
us a reminder just how beautiful this, our land, truly is. The kind of beauty that you can only find here, in the lush green all around us and the wondrous sights within. It's in the distinct aroma of our cooking, to the taste of food that takes you on a journey, in the sound of homecoming and the sound of Mother Earth, in the magnificence we find on our travels and the exciting moments we experience. Ours is the kind of beauty that comes in all things big and small. All we have to do is awaken our senses and truly enjoy what's uniquely ours. Explore Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
President Yoweri Museveni, together with fellow revolutionaries, stormed Kampala and ushered in a new chapter in our history. The sole driving ideology for those patriots was to liberate Ugandans from the tyrannical regimes at the time. Needless to say, our immediate post-independence leaders had messed up governance in most of the previous years after 1962, when Uganda attained independence. Uganda's post-independence period, like in many other African states, was afflicted by authoritarian rule, which led to a new development crisis. All previous transitions since 1962 have been characterized by chronic instability and violence. By giving Uganda a very long period of political continuity and stability, President Museveni helped resolve the biggest source of state fragility that had led Uganda to state failure. As a result, Uganda today, previously a chronically unstable failed state, plays the most critical stabilizing role in the region.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
It is a Good Morning Uganda, and right now we look at the traffic situation across Kampala, and we'll be following up on the Kampala-Jinja highway and some of the roads that join into that. Look into whether those would be a best option for you if you're still at home or leaving town and you want to get rid of the traffic. You could consider a few other roads that are joining into town that could be quite clear for this morning. But looking at some of what we have here, you look at the roads joining into Kampala-Jinja highway. That road seems to be quite a bit clear, except just a few instances where you have a bit of traffic. Now, if you're looking at roads like Yusuf Rule coming in all the way from Mulago, Wandegea, that seems to be quite clear traffic indicated by the green lines, meaning that that will get you into that road quite with a little traffic. Also, for those leaving town, it looks like it is quite clear for you, and you could be looking at quite a good one over there. Now, we do have that Wampeo Avenue for those joining into the Kampala-Jinja highway, and those leaving, it looks like it is all clear traffic indicated by the green lines, meaning that that is one you can take. There is just a little bit of traffic as you head towards the roundabout And that is for those leaving town, actually, or for those leaving the roundabout using Wampeo Avenue. There's just a bit of traffic, but just a small distance, and it does clear, so meaning that it is still nothing to worry you. You look at all the way from the Nakawa area using that route, it looks like it is quite clear in terms of traffic, and that will be one to use actually for this morning. Also, those joining in from the Lugogo bypass, there is a bit of traffic in orange lines right there, but that is also a short distance. But as you join into the main highway, it looks like that is also quite clear. So Lugogo bypass is also clear in terms of traffic for this morning, and that will be one to take comfortably. But also coming in from areas of Mbuya, if you're coming that side of Mbuya, looking at the new Port Bell Road, it looks like that is also quite clear as you join into the main Nakawa highway. There's a bit of traffic as you join in, but that is where the traffic lights are, so meaning that it could be just because of the traffic lights. But then again, as you continue, it looks like that is also quite a clear route. If you're coming in from Bugolobi area, that is using the old Port Bell Road as well, it looks like it is very clear traffic as you head onto the roundabout right there, joining in from the road from Nakawa, then from Bugolobi and Wampeo Avenue. It is quite clear traffic for you this morning. You look at some of the roads right from Access Road. If you're coming in from the side of Mokwano, that is Mokwano Road, that is also quite clear. And for those leaving town or for those joining in using Access Road, it's also quite a clear road for this morning. There's just a bit of traffic between the Station Road and the Kampala Ginger Highway, and that builds up right there for those joining into the main highway. But also it's a short distance, so meaning that it kind of clears. But if you're going to use, if you're not coming in directly through that road, you can still take a detour with the Station Road, which looks to be quite clear for this morning. But moving further as you head into town, as you join into Kampala Road, there is also quite clear traffic, and of course that goes all the way up to City Square. Looking at more of that, quite clear for this morning. Now, away from that, we also want to take a look at what is happening across the world in terms of climate news, but also the weather updates. Now, there was a recent activity across Texas where we did look at a tornado sweeping across the area, and now there is actually more concerns, especially with the oil and gas refinery that was affected. Now, news coming through indicating that there could be more disturbance of at least a chemical plant and oil refinery that were scrambling to recover from the operational upsets that were caused by the tornado that did occur on Tuesday. And now they're talking about also there could be other severe weather events that are fueling into disturbances within this oil and gas sector. Now, also the concern is about the fact that when you have such upsurge, you're looking at more of the spills, the oil spills that could be into the ground. And this is where we're concerned as environmentalists. You look at the effect of that and also the sustainability of such industries as they are put across, because you look at this being one of the actually old refineries outside of Houston, Texas, and it has been in existence for quite some time. But then you look into the fact that with such an extreme weather event, there are going to be spills, there are going to be those operational upsets, fine, but also we are concerned about the environment in which it pours. So it goes to show you how much most of these, even when you try to be sustainable, it will still, with extreme weather events, you might be looking at more hazards that are sweeping in, and of course giving a bit of a challenge when it comes to our natural ecosystem, which is why we continue to talk about clean energy, to talk about green energy, because at least for them, even when you have such an upset due to extreme weather, you know that the consequences won't be much, especially in terms of effects on the environment. And talking about clean energy, there's also a recent report that did talk about clean energy race sparking more ambitious climate policies. And according to the report that was given out just recently, you look at what has been also coming across ever since we had that That's report from COP27, especially in how nations are committing to moving into clean energy. But also we know that the targets are really up there, and not everyone is coming through with what they committed. I mean, up to now we're still seeing expansion of coal production, especially for Germany, and this is actually sparking a lot of talks onto whether nations, when after getting through these events or after making commitments on some of these agreements, they'll go ahead and do quite the opposite. Which is why the report that came out, that was yesterday, from the climate policy announcement that were passed actually from the last 3 months, that is in London, that is becoming more ambitious and most aim are raising to the fact that global temperatures right now are more than 1.8 degrees Celsius, and that is what the new assessment that was published yesterday is looking at. The Inevitable Policy Response, which describes itself as a climate transition forecasting consortium, has now been tracking government and private sector climate policies in the UK, and according to them, they're saying that this should have been putting a lot of weight, especially when it came to the Glasgow Pact. That was way back in 2021 when UK was hosting the Conference of Parties, and one thing that they did mention was they were committed to clean energy, to abolishing coal production. And right now the report is saying that according to the assessment that has been done, even the UK itself has not gotten there. We're looking at right now putting a global increase at 1.8 degrees centigrade, meaning that even the target that was set way back in 2015, that is the Paris Agreement, can no longer be achieved if you look at this kind of trend, because the aim was to make sure that temperatures don't go beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius. And that is how we are going to at least keep in check temperatures and keep in check global warming and look at reducing the impacts, because otherwise we'll be looking at more extremes, intense extremes in terms of floods and drought and heat waves and sea level rise. We do have cities right now that are threatened, islands that are threatened. They could be sinking due to sea level rise. So this is why we're saying that most of these nations that come up to say we are committing to this, they should be doing that. But when reports like this keep coming out saying that they have not done anything or they have done less in terms of especially going for clean energy, then we wonder, because we're looking at more of the world depending on fossil fuels, which are actually a major contribution to the greenhouse gases that are responsible for this trapping of heat and, of course, henceforth increasing temperatures. So that is the whole idea of why we keep pushing for renewable energy or clean energy. Make sure we reduce the gases in the atmosphere. Away from that, we also want to take a look at what is happening over Uganda right now. We'll be tapping in from our satellites, that is the UMITS satellites over Uganda this morning. We're looking at yet again a sunny morning across the northern part of the country, and that extends all the way up to eastern Uganda. Although we do look at some clouds that are starting to develop up across the Lake Victoria Basin and also towards midwestern Uganda, that could be bringing us a little bit of rains later in the day. We're looking at more of that, at least moving towards areas of Fort Portal, where we're seeing that orange deep red color system. That is the one that we do expect will be moving southwards and bring us rains, especially for areas within the Rwenzori area. Now, a few clouds that are also starting to develop to the western side of Lake Victoria, meaning that that could also be bringing us a little bit of light showers for the western area. And also more of that actually does develop as the day progresses. Yesterday we did see more rains developing, that is across the Lake Victoria Basin, parts of Kampala, Wakiso, and Entebbe, but those also do come in. We could be looking at a similar system today, but with a little bit of reduced wet weather activities. We're starting off with quite a cloudy morning as well across northern Uganda, as well as the Karamoja region. We're looking at a bit of clouds, those indicated in the white colors there. That means that it will help to keep temperatures a little bit down, and compared to the last couple of days anyway, it will still be quite up there. Now the forecast for this morning indicates light showers that are forecast for the central parts of Lake Victoria. That is where we have Mukono, Kampala, Entebbe and Wakiso, starting off at 25 degrees centigrade. That will be later on as the morning progresses. The eastern part of Lake Victoria, we're forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine, and temperatures will be at a warm 27. And the eastern parts of Central, we're forecasting also light showers. Those will be across a few areas, and in smaller quantities, but we do expect the temperatures will be quite warm. That is at 28 for this morning. Eastern Uganda, we have a mix of clouds and sunshine. Much sunshine for this morning across that area. We're talking about Soroti, Katakwi, Amuria and Kumi, and the temperatures will be quite warm. We're looking at a 29 for this morning. The Elgon area also forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine. Quite a chilly morning at 25 degrees centigrade. We do expect a bit of rainy weather to come in later as the afternoon continues into the evening, and we could also be looking at much more of that spreading across the entire Elgon region. Southwestern Uganda, we are forecasting isolated showers, and that will be starting off at 23 degrees centigrade. Quite a cool morning over that area. While looking at the western side of Lake Victoria, where we have Masaka, Kalisi, Sebabli and Rakai, we're forecasting isolated showers, and those will be starting off at a chilly 25 degrees centigrade. Now the central area of northern Uganda, Jumani, Gulu, Kituguman, and Padel, we're forecasting isolated showers. Those will be coming in as the morning progresses and also likely to cross over into the afternoon. But for this morning, we're dealing with quite a warm morning at 28 degrees centigrade. NRM Day celebrations are still continuing in Kakumido, and later on we'll be joining with Robert, who is there to give us the updates of what is happening at the celebrations. And of course, Good Morning Uganda continues, and we'll be giving you much more of those in the updates. My name is Mollen, Kenyena. I want to wish you a wonderful day.
Every waking day is a reminder just how beautiful this, our land, truly is. The kind of beauty that you can only find here, in the lush green all around us and the wondrous sights within. It's in the distinct aroma of our cooking, to the taste of food that takes you on a journey, in the sound of homecoming and the sound of Mother Earth, in the magnificence